The warm summers and frigid winters of Edmonton, Canada. The setting for a horror story as chilling as any from Hollywood, and a place where lonely heart Gilles Tétrault would meet a real-life monster.
You know, it was really hard to meet people, especially in a new city. So I decided to try this online dating thing.
Still stinging from a recent divorce, Gilles looks for other hopeful singles on the dating site Plenty of Fish, and reels in what looks like a winner.
And what was her name?
Well, on her profile, her name was Spider Webs, but then once we started chatting, she told me her name was Sheena. She was really forward very quickly. Like, she started asking me what my plans were for Friday.
But when Friday comes, Gilles discovers the directions to Sheena's house are as mysterious as her dark and smoky eyes.
The best thing for me to do is to just park into the driveway in front of the garage, and then she'd leave the garage open for me, and then I can go through the garage into the backyard and then knock on her door in the back of the house.
What were you thinking of all this?
Oh, I didn't trust it at all.
If they're first date jitters, Gilles shakes them off and follows Sheena's precise directions.
How'd you enter?
I turned the truck off, and then I went and crouched underneath and came back up into the garage, and I kind of paused for a bit there and then kind of looked around.
As his eyes adjust to the darkness, Gilles sees his virtual hookup become a real-life date with terror.
That's when somebody came out of somewhere and attacked me from behind. And all of a sudden, I see this guy, he's hovering over me, and he's wearing this painted-up hockey mask. Every nightmare I've ever had, every horror movie came back to me, and I got shivers down my back.
More than shivers. The masked man is jolting Gilles with 800,000 volts.
And he kept prodding me with the stun baton all over my upper body. I just actually grabbed the end of it and I pushed it away from my body just so that he wouldn't prod me everywhere else, right?
Then Gilles' blood runs cold as he looks deep into that hockey mask.
And that's when he actually took a gun out and he pointed at me and I just froze. I'll never forget his eyes. They were crazy. I knew just by the look in his eyes that he was going to kill me that day. He ripped out a piece of duct tape and he covered my eyes with it, so now I couldn't see anymore.
Gilles feels like he's walked straight into a slasher movie.
It was the scariest moment I ever felt in my life.
But this is all too real.
That's when everything just started slowing down. It was like life flashed before my eyes. And then I realized if I don't do anything, my family might not ever see me again.
Gilles' heart pounds in his chest. He knows he has just one chance to live through this.
That's when I ripped the duct tape off my eyes. And then I rolled under the garage door. I start to try to run, but all of a sudden, my legs were like jello. It wouldn't work.
It's the stun gun's late hit, knocking him to his knees.
Then I started to crawl down the driveway, and then he came right after me. Then he grabbed my legs, and he started dragging me back to the garage. And I thought I was dead because I'm like, it took me all this time to think of a way on how to escape, and now I'm gonna have to do it all over again. I had run out of ideas. I just didn't know what was gonna happen.
Summoning a last shot of adrenaline, Gilles once more wrestles away from his abductor's iron grip.
I put everything I had into my legs, and there's a couple walking their dog. So all I could get out was, there's a man after me, he's trying to mug me, please help me.
A miracle, or so he thought.
And that's when the masked man came out and almost ran into them. He started to pretend that we were best friends. And he said, come on, Frank, let's go back to the garage.
The startled couple refuses to help, but the attacker is spooked and slinks back into his lair. It's just the chance Gilles needs.
I could see his legs in the garage underneath the garage door, and he's pacing back and forth. So I started the truck, I slammed the door, and I put it in reverse all at the same time, and I drove off.
Nursing his wounds, Gilles struggles to understand what just happened.
So I went back onto the online dating website, and he had deleted the profile.
Sheena was gone.
Sheena was gone, yeah.
Feeling dumb and embarrassed, Gilles decides not to go to police, opting to tell friends and co-workers that he simply got mugged.
I felt that ashamed that I was even on the site, ashamed that I got duped from this girl that was a man. So I just didn't want to deal with it. I just wanted it to go away.
But it didn't go away. In fact, 1 week later, this saga would continue in a most horrific and gruesome way. Another man would answer the call for an online date with someone calling themselves Spiderwebs. But Johnny Altinger's episode wouldn't have a happy ending.
This man in a mask who attacked him wasn't just some prank gone wrong. This was something a lot more serious.
Gilles Tétrault barely escaped a vicious beating from what he thought was going to be an online date nicknamed Spiderwebs.
This is the place where I almost died. By a miracle, I was able to escape.
Gilles assumed it was all over, but tragically, he'd find out he was dead wrong. Just a week later after his attack, the same tangled trap is reset for a guy described as a quiet computer nerd named Johnny Altinger.
He was just a regular guy who was hoping to have a hot date on a Friday night. He had gone online on an online dating site, hoping to, hook up with someone that weekend, and he started talking with this woman named Jen.
But the weekend would come and go with no word from Johnny.
But Johnny had a really good group of friends, and they noticed that he was missing nearly immediately.
All his friends get is this strange message sent from Johnny's email account. I've met an extraordinary woman named Jen who has offered to take me on a nice long tropical vacation. See you around the holidays. Johnny.
Something is odd. I emailed him constantly, a couple of times a day, with no reply.
They ended up actually going to his house and looking through his things.
That's when the red flags really went up. In Johnny's tidy condo, they find his luggage, passport, and zero evidence that Johnny's taken an extended vacation. Then, they find an unexpected lead.
And that's when his one friend came forward and said, well, here's these driving directions that he had given me for this supposed date.
And just like with Gilles, the directions to Johnny's date have more confusing twists than a midnight movie.
Rather than just giving an address, it was sort of this elaborate description of, how to drive to the house. And she wanted Johnny to enter the house through the back. She would leave the back garage door open a little bit, and he'd have to come in through the back door and then enter the house that way.
Missing persons detectives follow the cryptic trail and end up at this rundown garage nestled in a residential neighborhood rented by an excitable young man named Mark Twitchell.
He's a salesman. He sort of had all these grand ideas and plans for the future.
Twitchell's a big fish in the very small pond of Edmonton's film scene. He's a homebrew costume designer known for elaborate mock-ups of famous film characters.
He was eccentric, he was happy, he was jovial. He could do a hell of an impression of Yoda.
And the cosplaying geek is a budding auteur himself.
So I don't know if I would say he was up and coming, but he was definitely getting a lot of traction with what he was doing.
After a well-received Star Wars fan film, he plans his next epic, a hyper-violent short film called House of Cards, featuring gruesome special effects and a main character modeled after Twitchell's favorite TV show, Dexter.
So what did you think of the storyline?
I didn't think it was anything spectacular.
Spectacular? No, but the setting is eerily similar and incredibly creepy.
In the movie script, there's this masked killer who kills someone in his kill room and really mimics Dexter. So there's a kill table, there's, plastic sheeting to, keep all the forensic evidence from escaping, and kill the victim, dismember the victim, and then dispose of the remains.
Twitchell's plot has cops on the edge of their seats. Was this art meeting life, meeting a possible death?
What kind of props for the killer in the scene?
The killer had a samurai sword. He also had a stun baton, and he had the hockey mask.
That's right, a hockey mask, the same ghoulish prop in Gilles' vicious attack.
Mark Twitchell's explanation was, quite innocent. He said, well, we've just filmed a horror movie at this exact location. Like, these are all my movie props. Here's the movie script. It's about this killer who's, luring men off dating sites, and, he kills them in this garage, and, these are all the props that we're using for the movie. There's nothing to see here.
A missing person's last known location, the set of a slasher film? It all seems like an odd fluke.
Police weren't suspicious of Mark Twitchell. They thought he was sort of an eccentric, filmmaker into Star Wars, and he had an explanation for what he was doing in the garage.
But then Twitchell surprises police with this shocking plot twist. In this email, subject line, more info that might be useful, he writes of recent events that are really freaking me out right now. Twitchell suddenly recalls a complete stranger approaching him in a gas station the night Johnny disappeared, offering to sell him a $20,000 car. The price? $40.
When the detectives heard that, they're like, what? There's no way he bought a car off someone for $40. And they actually went and located the car, and sure enough, it's Johnny Altinger's car.
That ties Mark directly to the victim in a way the police didn't have up until that point.
As cops set their sights on Twitchell, he rushes out this email to his production team, recommending everyone stop talking to police and promising nothing will happen if you tell them to pound salt.
At this point, I knew something was going wrong.
But the cops don't pound salt. They impound Twitchell's car.
Everything snowballed from there. They get a search warrant for the garage to look at his film studio to see what's happened in there. And it was really this film studio where they realized that all of these movie props and this film set wasn't actually a film set, that this was reality. Everything in that garage had some sort of forensic evidence of it that was of value. There was a hockey mask, they found a stun baton, they used luminol to look at the floors, and there was, signs that there had been a pool of blood on the concrete. There was blood all over the table, there was blood spatter on the walls. So it was just this overwhelming wealth of forensic evidence had been located in this garage, which, clearly pointed to, something terrible happening there.
Then there's Twitchell's car, another horrifying bucket of evidence.
They open the trunk and they realize there's this big pool of blood there. So immediately they are swabbing it and they're testing it to get a DNA sample.
The lab confirms it's Johnny Altinger's blood, lots of it. And cops find something else, a piece of evidence so shocking it would send shivers down the spine of even the most seasoned investigators.
Inside Mark Twitchell's vehicle is one of the most unbelievable sources of information in a criminal case you could ever find.
Police say you could hear screams coming out of this garage, but no one knows for sure if they were real or fake because Twitchell was so clever, he notified his neighbors that he would be shooting a movie and to disregard the screams.
He had basically handed out leaflets saying something to the effect of, we're shooting a film, you may hear some weird noises coming from the garage, don't worry, it's nothing to be worried about.
It's just a movie.
It's just a film.
But a search of Mark Twitchell's garage and car shows the horror that happened here wasn't movie magic, it was real.
So it wasn't until you've got the forensic investigators involved that are actually going through it bit by bit that they realize, no, this isn't fake blood, this is the real thing.
That's when cops flip the script and bring Twitchell in for interrogation.
You know exactly why you're here. John's gone missing. The reason you're sitting there is you're the guy that made him go missing.
Even under the cops' red-hot spotlight, Twitchell doesn't flinch.
I know we're not singing a movie, but it's a tough thing.
This is real life stuff. You gotta get away from the movies.
Yeah.
So get out of your film producer mode and the facade of thinking that everyone's an actor. Because this is real life.
You know, he still thought, I can outsmart these people. You know, they don't have anything on me.
There's something else I want to tell you, Mark. And that's that there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that you're involved in the disappearance of John Altinger. No doubt in my mind at all, Mark. Why?
There is a reason why, a big one. An unbelievable piece of evidence that catches everybody by surprise.
Mark Twitchell had actually brought his laptop with him and had kept it in his vehicle. And it was when they examined the laptop that they were able to find all of these recently deleted files.
Then cops unearth a manuscript of absolute mayhem, a single-spaced, 42-page document Twitchell thought he had deleted with a simple title, SK Confessions. SK, cops say, is short for serial killer.
SK Confessions describes this story of a man who slowly transforms from being a regular guy to becoming a self-professed psychopath. It looked like it was a diary.
I think one of the first lines in that thing is, "This is my descent into becoming a serial killer."
Scott Cook worked with Twitchell as a set designer.
So he was documenting what he was doing.
In his diary of death, Twitchell describes setting up his, quote, little workshop of horrors, claiming to use online dating to rope in my victims. His description of butchering Johnny is both gleeful and grotesque. Writing, I pulled my hunting knife from its sheath and thrust it into his gut. His reaction was pure Hollywood. I sliced open his jugular, let him bleed out right there on the floor. Most bloodthirsty of all, Twitchell's attempts to cover up his crime. First, burning Johnny's body in a barrel. When that fails, dismembering his singed corpse in a ghastly do-it-yourself autopsy. Twitchell disturbingly describes it as emptying a pumpkin for Halloween, then the final atrocity, disposing of Johnny's remains in a sewer where, quote, the body would rot away completely before anyone ever discovered the bones.
But the level of graphic detail in that document is extremely high.
It was so gruesome that he couldn't really have made this up.
It was nothing like Hollywood would have portrayed any kind of television or even movie.
Or was it? Could this all just be another figment of Twitchell's demented imagination? Tragically, cops are convinced it's all true.
The police were able to prove 85% of that document was accurate.
There was no doubt in my mind that he had done it, that, you know, he should burn for it. And quite frankly, I was disgusted by the level of detail that was in it.
But there's one more part of Twitchell's depraved account that sends up red flags.
The most important aspect of it was that it talked about a guy who got away. Finding the surviving victim was a crucial step that could help prove that SK Confessions was a diary.
Gilles Tétrault is the one who got away. He kept his horror a secret until he sees that mask looking back at him in the local papers. He knows he can't hide his story from the police any longer.
And I said, well, I'm the first victim and I got away, and I think you guys want to talk to me. And his jaw fell to the floor. So we're struggling, and somehow I ended up this way again. I told him the whole story, from front to back, and then he had me tell it in reverse from back to front.
But he had many chances to kill me, he never did.
It's word for word what it said into the diary.
It just wasn't professional. It was just like, it was maybe his first time.
Gilles lays out details only the first victim would know.
So this diary was really a step-by-step about how he lured you and what he did to you.
That's right, yeah. If my story was true in the diary, then obviously the other story was true as well.
Investigators nail Twitchell with a murder charge, taking him down fittingly on Halloween. Cops have what they think is Twitchell's confession. What they don't have is a body.
Where in the sewer was the part that wasn't written down, and police were not able to find Johnny's remains no matter how hard they looked.
Hey Mark, are we beating a dead horse here, or are you going to tell us where the body is?
Cops cruise Twitchell around the crime scenes, trolling for a confession.
Bring back any memories? You want to tell us where the body is now? We'll get this over with, get you back to the station.
But Twitchell is suddenly silent. That's a huge problem, one that could jeopardize the entire case.
How do you prove a murder if you don't have a body?
Mark Twitchell, amateur filmmaker, Star Wars geek, Dexter-obsessed copycat killer?
He said something to the effect of every city needs somebody like Dexter, and he meant in a real sense.
Edmonton cops say Twitchell was auditioning for that very role and scripted the brutal murder of Johnny Altinger in his dark diary, SK Confessions.
Here inside SK Confessions, it looked like they had a blow-by-blow account, everything that happened, and what the killer thought of it as he was doing it.
Inside the kill room where Twitchell allegedly bludgeoned and butchered Johnny, police gather a garage full of blood and DNA evidence. They've even got a witness who will testify that Twitchell tried to make him victim number one, Gilles Tatreau.
Just amazing. It's a miracle that I got away.
It should be a prosecutor's dream case, but there's a big piece of the puzzle missing, Johnny Altinger's body.
How do you prove a murder if you don't have a body? And, that was a dilemma that went on for months and months.
In the blood-soaked prose of Twitchell's diary, the killer disposes of his victim's remains in a sewer. But which one?
They had spent months searching through every sewer, snaking cameras down, trying to find where was this body located.
To no avail. Without Johnny's body, could a jury be convinced that this was nothing more than a twisted fantasy or just a missing persons case?
This was the big unknown through this whole case, which caused a lot of concern, was wondering, do the police have enough to prosecute this case if they don't have Johnny's remains?
And then the missing final chapter of SK Confessions gets delivered face to face.
The police got a call from Mark Twitchell's new lawyer and said, you want to come down to the jail, we've got something to show you.
When officers arrive, they find the movie-making madman is still full of surprises.
Mark Twitchell didn't say anything and just pushed across the table a folded piece of paper.
Under a printed Google map of Twitchell's neighborhood are these words, location of John Altinger's remains. Unlike the directions luring Gilles and Johnny into his trap, these directions are detailed and to the point. They lead directly to a sewer, a short distance from Twitchell's studio.
Extraordinarily enough, the body was found only a couple of blocks from where the police had stopped searching.
But was Twitchell's blockbuster admission part of a bigger plan?
Mark Twitchell's lawyer had done everything to try to make him look, as normal as possible. He was wearing a little, polo golf shirt. He was wearing khaki pants, schoolboy haircut. He wasn't someone that you would look at and say, that's a creepy guy.
Not creepy, and cooperative too. Was Mark Twitchell not the monster prosecutors painted him to be?
He gave the most elaborate defense I have ever heard in my entire life.
Elaborate and frankly, unbelievable.
He called this thing multi-angled, layered psychosis entertainment, that I was gonna lure him to this garage, convince him to disappear for a while, and then everyone would think that this really happened. And isn't that eerie that it happens to match this new movie that's just come out?
It was all a publicity stunt gone tragically wrong.
Johnny, flew into a rage and they had a struggle. And, in self-defense, Mark Twitchell accidentally killed Johnny Altinger.
That's right. Twitchell tells the jury the murder was all Johnny's fault.
The problem was that, none of that matches up with any of the evidence. This made absolutely no sense, and he really had no credibility.
The jury agrees, and only 5 hours later hands down the verdict. Mark Twitchell is convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison.
He's gotten the max sentence he can for this crime, but I don't think it's enough. What he did to Mr. Altinger is unforgivable.
Unforgivable and unforgettable. Coming back to the scene of the crime still gives Gilles Tétrault the chills.
That's more than just a garage.
Yes.
That is a kill room, a movie set.
Yep.
It's the place you nearly lost your life. When you look at this, what do you see?
It brings back a lot of the nightmares and the memories that happened to me here.
And even I could feel the eerie aura hanging over the secret kill room Twitchell called a movie studio.
Oh, someone's coming out.
And it's a feeling shared by the neighbors of this house of horrors like Gordon Swellen.
You can probably imagine why we're interested in the garage. You know him?
No.
He's the one who got away.
Yeah, I was
Keep
the
rolling.
first victim that got away.
What's more unbelievable, Gordon tells us the new renter has left the garage virtually unchanged.
Have you ever seen the inside of the garage?
No, my dad was told by the owner of it, though, that they still have all the markings on the ground of where all the body parts were and weapons. And that, it's still all taped down and everything.
How have you been able to heal from all of this? Are you better, or do you still suffer from, I would think, nightmares?
At first I did. I had nightmares and I think about it all the time. I started actually writing things down and it helped me quite a bit.
Both Gilles and Steve Lillebuen have written books telling the story of the wannabe Dexter killer. Even though he's now locked away for life, the twisted mind of Mark Twitchell still haunts those who have met him.
A lot of times people will write him off as an idiot and incompetent, but I say be more careful. He's smarter than they're giving him credit for. And he can become a dangerous person again if he's given the opportunity. Very dangerous, I think.
And believe it or not, Twitchell has posted another profile looking to meet people, this time on the website CanadianInmatesConnect.com. He writes in part, "I've made some terrible, regrettable choices in the past, and I've come to terms with the consequences. Now, I seek to infuse purpose into my life. Connection is a huge part of that." He also lists his expected date of release at 2027, which is not likely since he must serve at least 25 years before he's eligible for parole.